Texting me today.
What's
He's
the
like,
month?
can we maybe get on this one?
Yeah, awful.
Hello and welcome to this workshop with the Berwick Planning Board, Berwick Select Board, and Envision Berwick. We have members of all committees here and the chairmen of all three here. Town manager, code enforcement, and members of the public. Let's stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, I am Noah Cobb. I am the Select Board Chairman.
Jeremy Caston, I'm the chair of Envision Berwick.
I'm Michael LaRue. I am the Planning Board Chair.
James Bellissimo, Berwick Town Manager.
Irish Griffith, Berwick Code Enforcement Officer.
Jerry Graybo, Planning Board.
Cyrus Morgan, Envision Berwick.
Cameron Hladek, Planning Board.
Tom Wright, Select Board.
Phil Roy, Vice Chair for the Planning Board.
Mike Latimer, Select Board.
Mark Pendergast, Select Board.
Yeah, so a great mix of everybody. But before we start, public comment. Please come.
I was going to say,
come forward.
Come right up and have a seat. We can make room for you.
Just state your name and address, and we'll hear what you have for us.
You want to stand up?
My name is Paul Bouvert. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'd like to start off by admitting that we left an omission in the land use ordinance way back when, and all those section Article 8 has performance standards for all kinds of things, including nursing homes and funeral parlors and motels. We didn't have anything, gas stations or convenience stores. And when I learned about that, I felt bad because I'm partially at fault. But I'd like to suggest that the town be proactive. There are rumors that there's a gas station over on Route 4 land, and it's in the residential side of the Route 4 industrial corridor, which is fine, but a gas station we should have paragraph in Article 8 at the end that defines specific performance
recording in progress
to control gas station. And I know there are generic performance standards in the ordinance, but there's no specific ones. And God knows gas stations should have some for performance standards. So, I think there's enough time to plan ahead and add some before the November vote. I'd like to ask the planning board and the selectmen consider adding a section Section 8 performance standards for a gas station and a convenience store. Because most gas stations that are built today are built not only to sell gas, but to sell beer and things of that nature.
So the performance standards and the conditions.
I said that. That's all I have. I'll inch back to sit down.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
So, I'm Pat Bovier, and I'm also on Six Country Lane. And I think just to make it clear, we were hoping that, we had confidence that the planning board wanted to put in some specific standards, performance standards for gas stations, convenience stores, car washes, things like that would be coming down the line. And we were hoping that initially, since we know we can't get it into the warrant article in time for the people to vote on it, that we were hoping that the planning board could plan on the conditions that they would want to put on a gas station, and then they would at this point equal the performance standards. So, like you could develop conditions for this particular thing, and hopefully that would go into the actual performance standards when another warrant article could come out. Plus, of course, there will probably be some additional conditions just because the nature of whatever the gas station or convenience store is going to be. There'll probably be some particular things in addition to the performance standards that are developed. So that was a way to hopefully, since we couldn't react in time, because we didn't know in time to do anything with the town vote, that was something. So something else that I was just hoping that a couple things that we've been thinking of this. You guys probably haven't been thinking about any of this yet. But possible things about performance standards in addition to all the ones that are already in place and the usual ones. Things about this particular gas station at the end of Blackberry Hill Road would be the distance from public and private water supplies, like the South Berwick wells, and then how far from the wells from surrounding people. Some kind of insurance or bonding to cover future liability issues. Aesthetics of the building. Since this is on the, shall I say, the residential end of the RCI district, you have a lot of residences instead of businesses at that end. And living on Blackberry Hill Road, we consider that our neighborhood. And so we would like to see aesthetics be a big part of whatever's put up there, and it would hopefully fit into the neighborhood. And our neighborhood would include Circuit Road, Pond Road, coming out of South Berwick, Blackberry Hill Road, and I guess even up to the Wentworth Road and that area. Of course, I'm not even going to go here for very long, but the dangerous traffic conditions. I know that's already under study, but it's very important, I think, to realize that there are school buses that go through that intersection. It's not just cars. And also, at this point, tractors. So I think it's a kind of a unique intersection to be considering when you're thinking of things. Also, maybe the number of pumps. I've never looked at any gas station requirements, just some kind of, if there's anything general about the number of pumps and how big an area or whatever, that's probably all part of it. And then a big concern for us at this end of the road, at Blackberry Hill Road, and that end of Route 4 is the farmland and the soils. And we're very concerned about the runoff from a gas station and the pollution that could occur. I don't know if it would occur just regularly or if it would be if there was an accident. But I believe that's prime farmland soil there, and it would be very important for us to consider the fact that that could be ruined forever. Then the neighborhood convenience store, that's something else kind of missing in the land use ordinance. We have a definition for a neighborhood convenience store, but that's about it. There's some size a size piece in there, but one thing to consider would be the alcohol sales. What kind of alcohol sales, if there were going to be alcohol sales, and again the aesthetics, something similar to fit into the residential part of the road there. You're not business yet down there until you get up further, and so it would be nice to, like we have the Kind Farms, they've done a really nice aesthetic job of fitting into, I think, things, and if we could have whatever is going next to that and there to be something similar to the residential part of that. So I know it's kind of interesting. I was talking to Paul about neighborhood, and I was saying, gosh, most people think their neighborhood is part of their subdivision or something like that, but for us, our neighborhood is Blackberry Hill Road, out onto Route 4, across onto Circuit Road, onto Pond Road, up further onto the Wentworth Road and the long old Blackberry Hill Road. I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but so that to us is our neighborhood, and so it's different than thinking of a little neighborhood. I guess we live in a big neighborhood because it's a rural area. So just some things, hopefully, that when you're developing your performance standards, you won't forget about some of these things that I've mentioned. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Real brief.
Just one thing, Paul Bovaert, I think we figured out was the longest serving planning board member in the United States at the time that he stopped serving on our board, over 45 years, right? 44. But he got bit by that damn tick. Anyway, so when they called me just to talk about this, from a land use perspective, we don't have a gas station definition. So I think for planning board, that would be a first order of business. And then because that is not a defined use, there is section 6.1.2, which goes over omitted uses and says that in the event that a proposed use is not specifically identified in the tables, the code enforcement officer shall select the listed use which most closely resembles the proposed use in impact and intensity, and then basically use those performance standards. And in cases where no listed use is reasonably construed, then basically the code enforcement officer may determine that that's not permitted. And obviously that's not going to come up. But with the omitted uses regulation that we have in here, that just leaves a lot up to somebody else's ideas. And so I think defining it and getting some performance standards. And we've got a really good, 8.6.7? We got a spot in the land use ordinance ready for it. So that's all.
Name and address?
Oh, Nicole Fecto. I live on Wingate Lane.
Thank you. I mean, I know who you are, but
You don't look on Facebook.
Okay. So that is the end of the public comment. First item on the agenda is the cannabis license cap. James?
This is an annual exercise, kind of part of when we put in the cap. One of the promises was to revisit it, just because it has a general idea. We want to be pro market and see where we're at with the industry. I can defer to the planning board chair. I don't really have much more to add.
Okay. I know we've had a question about another license coming in once, but I kind of have something to say. That I've been reading Maine's Constitution, and Section 1, the very first thing in the Declaration of Rights, is all men are born equal, free and independent, and have a certain natural, inherent, and inalienable rights, among which are those of enjoying and defending life, liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and of pursuing and obtaining safety and happiness. So my thought is, happiness, if someone has a piece of property and they want to put a cannabis store on their property, if it makes them happy, they should be able to do it. I mean, that's pretty basic right there.
Well, I
Is the format that we can just, like,
agree.
respond
I
to this
agree to
one?
it. I agree to an extent. However, if pornography makes someone happy, should we open a strip club?
Right.
I mean, apply the same standard across the board.
I feel like we
Oh,
could
we do
all
have-
We have
build a
standards.
state
We have-
constitution that just support arbitrary. I mean, that's a little bit. You don't really believe that whatever makes somebody happy is also good for our town.
Having
or
a concert in my
actually legal.
backyard every
Well,
day
have-
would make
I
me
wouldn't
happy,
just
but it
get
wouldn't make my
constitution.
neighbors happy. I mean,
Well, I mean, we all took oaths to uphold the Constitution.
Sure.
And if we already have it and the state says that we can have it, why are we trying to limit that?
Well, what would you say to towns that don't allow it at all? Is that
Well, I think they're going against it.
okay? So, all of them are in good company. But no, we have how many licenses?
That's what I was
21?
going to ask, is what do we have, what the caps, the different categories?
Let me grab that actual number. It's let me grab the actual
I think
number.
my recollection is something that like, there's 20 or 21 total licenses out right now. 19?
Thank you.
And not all of them are being used right now.
That's true. Not all of them are active. When we discussed the cap, my argument was that the cap was. I'm not in favor of a cap personally. I believe that the market will bear what it bears, but I was in favor of the cap because it was a temporary measure because we had a lot coming in and we needed to sort out the details. We needed to know, like how this was going to affect the town, how it was going to look, where they were going to be spaced. We wanted to have things actually open up before we just let out another, 20 licenses or something like that, Because at that point, we had basically nothing open, just a bunch of people applying for licenses, and we didn't actually know what it was going to look like. Mm-hmm. We also wanted to make sure there were no holes in the land use ordinances, things that people were going to exploit or misuse, put them in places that weren't zoned for it. So it was always meant to be a temporary measure to make sure that we got all things in a row, and then expanded outward or eliminated eventually. So that's certainly a discussion that we can have in terms of pros and cons. So.
How many licenses are currently not being used? Do we know? Do we have that number?
It goes by conditional uses.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of pretty much effectively, I think all of them except for one.
And that's the biggest one.
Moving forward.
It's retail. I think it's retail that we're up
isn't
against the
using
cap,
their grow
right?
license.
No, there's
Grow
one
license
that
down next to Collins Sheet Metal.
Yep.
That's not being used.
that's the biggest one.
That's the biggest one.
That is the biggest
There's
one.
the street buildings in there, so that's
Yep.
not being used.
Yeah. And they have up to 10 buildings.
But not all of them approved for
All of them are approved.
marijuana.
12 buildings.
12
10.
buildings, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought it was only a couple.
No,
buildings
it's like
approved
60,000
for
square
marijuana.
feet.
Right.
Yeah.
But the
Right?
issue with that next to
It's
Collins
all licensed under
was-
one, though.
I think the issue was with the one next to Collins, when we were all talking about it, was the owner didn't know how he was going to handle his license, whether it was all the buildings, because there were going to be different players, and
Yeah.
each of the buildings was going to be under his, or what he was going to do.
Yeah.
I think that was what
And,
was thrown
and
up
what
in the
we
air.
made them do is it has to all be under one.
Under one.
So if the
Which also
if the
shows
current
us-
licenses that are out there are not all being used, what's the demand signal to say that we need more?
The cap is on conditional uses,
Mhm.
so someone can have a conditional use and not have a license.
Yeah, as long as they keep paying for that, right? They have to pay for it yearly.
They got to keep their conditional use
Right.
active,
Right.
which, so in the case of the one next to Collins Sheet, they've
Yeah.
started construction, they've completed one
Now,
building.
also as for town revenue, aren't cannabis is one of the highest paying for taxes.
In terms of industries, it's it's probably storage facilities is one.
Right, but
Yeah,
right
it's up
behind
there.
that
It's
is cannabis.
Yeah, it's about, in terms of property taxes and license revenue, it's approaching six figures.
Yep.
Now, in terms of demand, I mean, we can't accurately gauge demand because we have the cap.
Right.
Since we have a restriction that says we're not going to be approving anymore, we're not. I mean, people just are able to look that up pretty easily and go, like, yeah.
I've gotten one call about it.
I mean, if you want to come up to the microphone for
Yeah. I've gotten one call in the 6 or 7 months that I've been here. One call, and I said, "I'm sorry, we're not taking anymore."
I've received 4.
And we've had the guy from next door come into one of our meetings and ask about it for downtown for an adult use, but we told him no.
I've received about 4, maybe 5. I think the 5th one was the one that I had called Dave, the first one. But I've received several from people wanting to know if Berwick was accepting any more. But we're going to try and come to town.
And in terms of the actual cap number, it's slightly arbitrary because what essentially happened was we had the influx of applications, we had an influx of people coming in, and basically we said, at this point, no more until we get everything sorted out. So it's not like we came up with a number and said 19's the number or 20's the number and then there's no more after this.
Right, we gave
we
it
just
data.
said, after today, we're not taking any more until we see how this pans out.
Is it sorted out?
That's a good question.
Is it sorted out?
James, what do you feel?
Well, my opinion would be, I think we have enough. I think we have enough storefronts. I mean, Mike may disagree, but I think there might be room to open up for a cultivation facility or two if they're zoned in the right places. I think those can be. If we take a look at the performance standards, really tighten in and hone in on where we want them, and try to minimize the facilities trying to be jammed in areas we didn't intend them to go. I think they're high property value, and I think at a smaller scale they have less externalities.
Yeah, especially if it's a cultivation facility. There's limited people coming in and out. In commercial areas, especially in the RCI zone, it would be a perfect thing to add to it more. I know we have setbacks for that, which is what, 1,500 feet?
1,000 feet.
1,000 feet. Okay.
Well, that isn't what happened on Pond Road. It's not 1,000 feet from the setback.
Yeah,
right?
they are.
It's 1,000 feet.
Oh yeah.
It's 1,000 feet.
And that's too close.
From Kind Farms.
How is that too close?
From that house?
Oh, no, from each other.
Well, from each other. No, it's not from a house. It's from each other. So from Kind Farms to the 11 Pond Road one, it is 1,000 feet.
Yeah,
from
right. But what about from a house? A setback from a house?
I think we put in either 100 feet or.
That's too close.
Let me get. Well, we put it after.
In keeping with the theme we started on, which is somebody's right to pursue happiness, how much are we hearing from people, how much are you guys, because I wouldn't necessarily know, that their happiness in their home is being impinged upon by facilities? What's the feedback on that?
They got the munchies.
Very little. Very little. In all honesty, usually there's that ups like in the beginning, and once something's up, unless Irish is hearing something, once it's there, a lot of times they say they're actually the best neighbors.
I've had only one complaint, and it was somebody that was due to change their filters. So there was some odor emanating in the neighborhood. I sent them a letter, and problem solved.
And that's it.
Yep.
No, we've had questions on lights, Jeremy. Lighting, odor. Let's say the people on Route 9, Tom, right? I'm trying to think of half a dozen
at
people
one
on Route
point
9
he had a couple
came in
things going on up there.
They weren't
Right,
happy
and
with
now
it.
when he built the last section of it, we made him go to the new town standards. He was grandfathered in before, so he didn't have to have the odor mitigation and stuff like that, but when he built the last building for that, it's now up to the codes that we have, up to the standards.
The one building, but not all of them.
No, all of them. All of them. That was a condition.
All
All of it had to be under those standards now.
See, so that's the kind of thing that the the cap was put in place for. Is like we have these problems, now we can create standards, and we can.
But I
we
remember
can fix them.
Remember when we were talking? This is a while ago. I remember talking to you about how was it in Elliott? Was it dirt?
Sweet Dirt.
Sweet Dirt. They have those nice greenhouses, and you commented about the lights, how they look really nice. Well, we can't even have that here because of our standards.
Why?
Because we have a light restriction. They have to be downward facing, and they can't be
They have to have a
The
case
dark-
on them
dark
and-
sky
dark
stand.
sky
What do you
standards.
say? We can't have lights in a greenhouse?
No, we can't have lights
go up.
emitting outside of it.
It's got to go down.
Yep.
They use the lights to grow.
Oh yeah. But they would have to cover it. They would have to. If,
The greenhouse.
So that's something that, can be looked at.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's, you don't have to, even if say they go in for a permit to do that,
Yeah.
you guys can say, okay, yeah, you can do that. And start to change the standard.
Right. We'd have
Same
to change
with the gas
standard.
station. If
Yep.
we're going to have a gas station go in, okay? Pat said all things, aesthetics, all that stuff should be figured out to give the guy a permit, turning lanes, whatever.
Right.
We do it right then with him or whoever.
Yep. Or condition it. Yeah.
Small business doesn't want to wait forever for a
Right.
couple of years while we decide to
Right.
come up with some standards. That's baloney.
No, I agree with that too.
I think that I think the cap came from the planning
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So-
No,
I remember that.
It was.
I was one
bounced back
of
and forth a
two
little
that
bit.
were against it. I remember that, and I'll still be against it.
I was probably one of the brilliant.
For a free market, we should be able to have as many that dictates that is needed, and the ones that are going to fail are the ones that are going to fail.
And I do believe that is correct. And the only reason I supported the cap when it came back around was because it was meant to be temporary, and it was meant to just help us patch any holes that might be existing in our current standards. And
Don't you think it's still temporary?
I still think it's temporary. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's still temporary. I mean, we're
Well,
not being overwhelmed with people coming in looking for permits to grow.
No, but
From
I'm
what I
saying that,
understand.
like,
When we
we
start
can-
that point,
we
then we
can-
can talk about extending it.
Well, I'm saying we can, well, obviously not now. This is not a meeting where we're going to take any votes or anything like that. But I mean, in the future, we can, I would like to see the restrictions loosened or lifted until it becomes an issue again, or maybe it doesn't become an issue at all. Maybe we overcame the peak, But if we lift the restrictions and 20 new applications show up on the desk, then we're going to have to.
You're going to be the meat grinder.
Well, I mean, even at the standards now, we can't have another store in the new downtown.
Good.
No, that's your opinion, though.
That's my opinion.
My opinion is we should have one in there because
We got one right over there.
the
Well, it doesn't
standards of
matter
that
when either one
building
of us cares
compared to
what
the
the burger
standards
wants.
to those buildings are a lot
Another
different.
issue to take into account, though, if we're going to talk about standards, and I know we don't talk about it a lot, but they had a pretty high-profile break-in at one of our facilities in town that
Yeah.
led across a multi-state car chase, and we have very limited resources when it comes to our law enforcement. And, how much more are we willing to invest if we are bringing in a business that could be attracting a criminal element? And granted, I will concede that may have been an isolated incident, but that was a pretty high-profile isolated incident that directly affected our police department and police departments in
states.
neighboring communities, and it affected public safety.
And
So
I-
that I think
and
any performance standards moving forward should have a requirement for security, whether that's physical security, i.e. barriers, shatterproof glass, whatnot, because that stuff's worth
Oh yeah,
money.
it's already.
It's
Well,
in-
I know with Kind Farms they put in a $60,000 security system. Like there's
after
no,
that incident?
this
Oh,
is
before.
when they were building it. They put in a huge security
And they still got
system.
robbed.
Well, and
But they still got
Cumberland
caught.
Farms gets robbed.
Oh, yeah.
His
All the
gas
time.
stations
Yeah.
get robbed.
Yeah.
And-
That's more
and
frequent.
so-
Melatonin's going to get robbed.
The reality is that is a pretty isolated incident. We ask of the police chief every time it comes up, every time a new license is up for renewal, if there's been any trouble, if there's been any if there anything that they could do to improve their security, things like that. And 99 times out of 100, there's no issues. An alarm went off by itself or whatever. We show up and they know where to patrol, and these places have security lights and security doors, and I mean, again, we had a murder a couple of weeks ago. Like that was it's jarring because it's a completely out of the ordinary experience.
Right.
It's not like New York City or Chicago or anything where like those sort of things happen on a daily basis or
If I could just talk about the cap, is the other thing we have to remember is when we put this cap in place, is Berwick was only one of the only towns in the area where we were allowing it, and we were afraid we were going to get overrun. Now, as I drove up 202 in Lebanon for the first time in a while, and I was surprised at how many were there. And you go down Elliott,
236.
So that's when we put the cap in, is back when we were the only town allowing it, and we were
And
worried
Sanford
about
has
it.
a lot of cultivation going on right now too, so it's absorbing some of that away from us as well.
And as far as the storefronts, I every time I talk to the chief and captain, practically, I ask them specifically about the one across the street, and they said, other than parking problems on Sullivan Street, they haven't had any issues there. So the idea that these are bringing criminal elements into town, I don't buy that. Is anytime there's any money transacted anywhere, it attracts a criminal element. So.
No, and that's one thing I want to point out to the planning board too is you guys go through everything and put the licenses in and you do your due diligence and you do a great job at putting those conditions in and getting them up there. But then they come before us, and when they do, we go through James, we go through the police department, we go through those questions to make sure when that license is up or when that renewal is up, we're asking those questions. And like we said, I mean, for the most part, these are the best businesses and people that we have in town. Is when we get back, from the police department, they hear nothing.
They tend to be very, very receptive to criticism, very respectful of the process because they want to be here.
Yeah, they know there's a stigma.
And they know, and they know that
there is a huge market.
Yeah,
I mean, it beat lobster. It beat lobster.
And after Whole Foods stopped selling lobster.
Irish, what do you got?
So I have two things I want to say. First of all, I'm not even going to ask if any of you have been into any of the pot shops because that's probably a don't ask, don't tell thing. But as your code officer, I have gone into a couple of them to talk to them about things that issues with lighting and particularly the Silver Therapeutics. And because I don't have a town uniform, I walk in and they treat me just like every other customer. And every shop in here has checked my license and swiped my license. So they're also tracking whoever's going in. So that's good because to me, if somebody's getting their license scanned, they're less likely to be a nefarious type. But it seems like the conversation in this, I just want to ask, where everybody's standing here, because it kind of seems like the conversations are going all or stay where we're at, like free for all or stay where we're at. What are the possibilities of just increasing it by 5 or 10, and then
or giving it another date, like another year of open, and then
But
because
I mean,
at 1,000 feet, you can only put in so many. It's not like we're going to put in another 30 of them.
But
they're
I mean,
not going to fit.
If we raise the cap by 5 and see what happens, and see if we all of a sudden, word gets out that we've raised it by 5, and all of a sudden our office is
see that makes sense on paper. The only problem, 2 problems with that. One, any number we pick is just going to be arbitrary.
Yes.
And 2, I mean, we have businesses that take 3 license spots. They go. We have cultivation, we have adult use, we have medical. And so if we only have 5 slots available, we could have one business come in and take more than half the slots available to us. You know what I mean?
That's true.
So what if we took a hybrid approach and said not to exceed X amount of licenses and then get it on the ballot and let the townspeople speak for what they want or what they don't want in their town? So we make a determination and say, okay, not to exceed, what's the number, 3 more, 5 more licenses, and if everybody's in agreement, we put it on the ballot and we let the people decide.
Again, that any number we pick is going to just be we're going to pull it out of the air.
Correct,
but
it's
fair.
It's
going to be
fair
up to the town anyway,
and it's
so
fair and equitable.
Well, no, the town didn't vote on the moratorium. The select board. It was brought forward. We voted on it. We were able to put it in place, and we're able to remove it as well. So, I mean, again, maybe an arbitrary number is the solution, but I the whole problem with the moratorium in general, and again, this is the issue with the
cap, not a moratorium.
Yeah, the cap, whatever. On the same thing, the idea for the cap on gas stations or whatever is like we don't want to deter future business just because they see it, on the books. We might put a cap in place because we're worried about this one, and then deter two other ones that are looking at putting things in place. So I lean toward opening it back up and letting it fall and see keeping an eye on it and just seeing if it if we get a big run or not or.
How much cap do we have left? How much space do we have left?
None.
None.
It's all
closed.
been taken up.
And it's been closed for a couple years now.
So there's 19 licenses.
Yeah.
Would it be
But they're
reasonable?
not operating. It's not
Yeah,
19.
there's a couple that aren't
Right.
operating.
Couple that aren't.
So I'm going to quote Tom on something right now. And I remember this. This is burned in my brain. Berwick needs to be welcoming to all. Plain and simple. And I think the more we keep it simple, the easier it's going to be. We have the standards that we can enforce. We have a code enforcement officer that can enforce those issues. I think that taking the cap off at this point would probably be, in my opinion, the best thing we could do.
And the other thing, too, is even if we take the cap off, if all of a sudden we do see a rush, we can reinstate a cap.
That's right.
Does that sort of thing ever happen?
What that?
Where
marijuana?
Well, yeah. Where
Well, how about any
turn
other
the spigot
industry?
on and then quickly turn it back
Well,
off?
how about any other industry in Berwick?
Yeah, well, no, that's it. I can't think of anything.
Well, we stopped building permits for a while there.
Oh, yeah,
Number of
back
years
in
ago,
the
we stopped building
80s.
permits.
Yeah, that was before my time.
Yeah, that was back
For 1 year.
I was two. Sorry.
Well, then there was when we only had 20 building permits a year or whatever. And people camped out for 3 or 4 days out here. Seriously.
I heard that was New Year's, right?
Yeah.
Everybody spent New Year's Eve
Yep.
waiting in line.
Yep.
I'll say even with that permit cap, there's still like 60 houses built that year. So that's more than 2 or 3
Yeah,
times.
I think I know the chart that you showed us a while back of like the building boom in Berwick, where all of a sudden it just spikes for no reason. It's like more houses than people in the town. But I think it's something that we can definitely revisit in a meeting. Maybe have a public hearing about.
Get us some more information about exactly how many phone calls you've had requesting it, and go forward to that and find out.
I mean, if you have-
are the people asking, are they asking whether it's a grow or a storefront or anything, or?
I've been asked about marijuana. They usually call. Most of them that have called and said, "Hi, I'm just wondering if Berwick is accepting any more marijuana grow facilities."
No.
So looks like growth is the issue. I haven't had anybody specifically ask about a storefront to me. Dave's approaching, so.
And the 2 people that I had contact me was about starting a storefront and starting at a different place. So that didn't produce marijuana at the time.
Also state that anytime cannabis has been involved on a vote, it's always passed in Berwick. I'm not saying that it still will, but it's been passed by a huge majority.
To quote Eleanor Murphy, that first time around, she said, "I didn't know Berwick had so many Stonies."
Well, how many of them lived through the 60s?
It is a drastic change on volume of people who vote too. Anytime that cannabis is involved. So
yeah, we can work that into a future select board meeting. Let people come and talk to us about it. Make sure we have all the information about it. If you have any information on people that have reached out to you about it, when we actually figure out when we're doing it, you're welcome to invite them, and they can come talk to us and see what their intents and issues are. I mean,
I'll be honest, I will start asking contact information going forward, but in the past it's just been, sorry, we're full.
No, it makes sense.
No room at the end.
And that's, I assume that, but I just mean like if you happen to have any,
I might have some in I do sometimes jot notes when people are, so I'll see what I can find.
I guess, Dave, same for you, too, if you have anybody call you. Just,
Yeah, just something, not next meeting, which
No.
is tomorrow, but
Thank you.
maybe not even 2 weeks, but soon we can put it on the agenda and have a discussion about it. The next thing on the agenda is moratorium and process.
Just want to go over definition of a moratorium, and that a moratorium is adopted by the town's legislative body, so that would be town meeting. And that was kicked around, where it was the select board can do it. Basically, if we wanted to put together a moratorium, I think it'd kind of be a collaborative effort, ultimately forwarded by the town, but it goes to town vote. It's effectively an ordinance.
And moratoriums can't be indefinite either, can they?
It's a maximum of 180 days.
Right.
So
With
even
one
if
extension, right?
So even if we did put a moratorium on the ballot for June, it would only last until the end of the year.
Right, and I would recommend holding a special town meeting if we went down the moratorium route, because we received a traffic movement permit for the gas station. I'm only not getting into specifics too much for the applicant, but just to say that it's more than just a rumor. We know it's coming, and a traffic movement permit is related to planning board, obviously, but it's very much like a site plan location permit, where it happens parallel to planning board. So it's not unusual to start seeing traffic movement or DEP permits. I don't believe it'll need a DEP permit. And the traffic movement permit can take upwards of a year, where planning board could take a few months. One of the
traffic movement, is that talking about putting in a turning lane there and everything?
That would be one of the considerations, yes. A traffic movement permit, it's the highest level of traffic permit that DEP or DOT has.
Okay.
I mean, what if if the DOT says it's fine?
I would believe that the planning board can condition it
So
as
we
a
can condition
requirement.
it. All of us, okay.
As long as you make I think making a finding on vehicular access, that the proposed layout shall provide for safe access, and if the planning board makes a determination that safe egress cannot be achieved without the turning lane, and it says it right here, the proposed site layout shall provide for safe access and egress from public and private roads by providing adequate location, numbers, and controls of access points, including site distances, turning lanes.
So this would be a turning lane onto Blackberry, right?
Right before, it'd be, well,
Well,
it
it
can't
Because
really,
it depends on which way the lot's laid out. too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, in this case would be a,
well,
Turning lane off
it
of-
is also is we've had enough, studies and things done of that corridor already. That one we sat through with the state police 5 years ago, was it, or so? Is and they state in the DOT in there says all these things would be a good idea is to have, but the state's not going to pay for it.
Yeah, they don't know, right.
Is
Right.
so this is the time when is
Put that back.
I have not paid too much attention to all of this, but this is the time when we make sure that our needs all along that stretch are taken care of.
Yeah, for sure.
If it turning lanes all the way up to Blackberry Hill Road and up to Pond Road, so be it. That's what we force them.
The other, what James didn't say is the speed. It's 55.
Right.
It can't be 55 if you're going to have this. I live there.
Oh.
I can't get out on Pond Road.
You know
I go
what?
down Circuit
Good
Road or
luck.
I go around
I've
the
been
other
trying
way.
for 10 years to get the speed changed. They won't do it.
That's
I know.
DOT.
They wanted to raise it.
Just have it done.
You can do it if enough people write to the DOT. My wife checked it out and complained. They have to come down and address it.
and I would think the more curb cuts there are, the more
Right.
That's a-
Well, you would think, but we also have people getting walloped in their car pulling out of Kind Farms. We had a fatality there. We've had, there's a member of this board who lost a loved one on that road. We've had, how many fatalities have we had on that road? And I mean, it's in our job description to ensure public safety, and
But
we
again-
have to be cognizant of that and not just follow the almighty dollar.
Unfortunately, what Mark and I found from our meeting with the state police there is all of those accidents are driver error. It's not a matter of, other things.
Driver error, or one of them was drugs, huh?
But if you, even with driver error, even with driver error, if you reduce the speed, you reduce the impact, which is less
They're going to
impactful.
come up and tell you, Phil, we'll reduce the speed to 45. Then they're all going to go 65 to pass everyone going 45.
Right.
That's just an argument the state will give you.
I agree.
Well, what we need to do is put pressure on state representatives and our state senators.
Well, and the people with the deep pockets who are going to develop out there, they should be.
When I was in the legislature,
campaign the state to make it happen.
we helped lower the speed limit on Cranberry Meadow Road is by getting involved in it. So
When they put in the ATM, Northeast Federal was forced to put in the turning lane.
Right.
So this would be the same type of thing.
Exactly.
It's a business.
Force them to do it.
Right.
No problem.
And then, talking about the aesthetics and everything is, we have the dark sky ordinance, so we have to control the lights and everything. Like I said,
you
make
guys
it
can
blend
put that
in as much
condition
as
in all the
possible.
time. Yep.
But,
I mean, we also have like sign ordinances as well,
Right.
too,
Yeah,
right?
we got
So I mean,
sign
like,
ordinance, lighting
I mean,
ordinance.
they're not going to be able to put up a giant gas sign, are they? Or,
No, I won't
They
be
can't
able.
have anything that's internally illuminated.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to have an electronic.
Huh.
sign.
Wouldn't be able to have an electronic sign?
Well, the electronic message
There's already a
board.
bunch on the road. Why couldn't they?
No,
They were in before the standards were in.
Once those signs break, they can't replace them. They have to replace them with externally illuminated.
If I could bring up a point about the moratorium and the reason I came and presented before the select board, and I was incensed about it, and I will tell you that I felt that the planning board, there was a sense of urgency placed on us to vote on that land use ordinance and get it through, and I understand that there's timelines involved. But I'm not completely deaf to the comments of the townspeople and the townspeople who came here tonight to express their concerns with that type of business and its location. And just based on that, we have to be sensitive to perceptions. And I'm not saying that anything was done inappropriately, but I'm just saying the fact that we voted on it and we didn't have performance standards for gas stations, and then immediately after that we're saying, hey, there's a gas station on the horizon. Public perception of that, we're opening ourselves up for fire.
That's not what we're going to do. That's not what will happen, Phil. We're going to, as he's building the gas station,
Yep.
permits, we're going to set the standards then.
Yep.
We're not going to do it after. We have to set it before he gets a permit. This is what you got to do. If you don't want to do that, no permit.
Absolutely.
the
So
bottom line.
in that spirit, Mark, I would challenge us to do our due diligence because we don't have a performance standard currently. Would it be reasonable to do a short-term moratorium until such a time the planning board and the select board can come up with what is a good performance standard based on quantifiable information, not locally and nationally? What is going to be right for Berwick? We're affecting groundwater, potentially affecting groundwater in that area. That's on the Berwick and South Berwick town line. Public safety with regard to the traffic. Let's set some standards and let's take the time to do our due diligence and do it correctly. And if that looks like a moratorium, is that appropriate and is everybody agreeable?
Well, as James says, we can't unilaterally put in the moratorium. It would have to go on the ballot,
Correct.
which is still totally possible. And the town would have to approve it. So, I mean, it's not, I'm of the mind that, the voters, typically they know what they want to do.
Yep.
And they only occasionally make something I think is a mistake, but they, so.
By electing us?
Among other things. But, no, like, if it's a question of, like, should we do it, should we not, it's something that's totally fine to put on to the voters and ask them what they think, It's, we take ourselves out of the equation, they make the decision. If they decide against it, though, we need to be prepared for that eventuality and just, already be figuring out what standards we want and, so that we're not caught because we thought it was going to pass or something like
Right.
that,
Right.
And again,
Well,
it's only going to be 6 months worth I mean, so
But it
only
gives us
gets,
breathing room.
It only gives you to the beginning of 2024 to have all that set up. I mean, we'll have an election in January of 2024. That we
So
could
if you
do.
would just dump the $500,000 into a lot on Route 4,
Yeah.
how would you feel about that?
I'd be upset.
I mean, I'd be upset too. But one,
I think what Pat and Paul said earlier
They can do it, but do it
about
right.
developing the conditions, I think we need to work on our conditions for that said gas station and then develop that into the performance standards. I mean, that's how we did it with cannabis.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
when
but
they
we-
came
and
through,
here's
we
hold on,
set
and
our
before-
standards, and then that turned into our ordinances.
There's one thing we got to remember too, guys. We're in a workshop too. We don't have a active permit in front of us, so we can't talk about a specific lot.
May I say
So
something?
Well,
let's get that out
May
there
I
first
say
too.
something? 'Cause I've been sitting here for. I had a discussion with Lee J. Feldman, the town planner, about this, and he said we can put in the we can put in there when the planning board approves it, we can put in conditions of approval. We can put in you have
Everything you
to
want.
you can't be within 500 feet of another residence. You can put that in there if the
Yeah.
planning board really feels like that, and that's got to every condition of approval has got to get voted on by the planning board.
Right.
So maybe that passes, maybe it doesn't. That's the temporary fix.
And I think that's a good approach, but I would use solar as an example, right? When I first started on the planning board, we had a solar project before us, and I didn't know anything about solar, so I started digging and looking at historical stuff and looking at, hey, how'd this pan out in Europe, where now they ban solar? And you start looking at the ripple effect of that industry, right? So if we are not in front of this issue, and we allow a gas station to go in and we don't establish performance standards that work for us, then we deserve whatever outcome we get. And it's the same thing with solar. And we got smart on a little smarter on it. We still haven't really developed performance standards, but we have instilled conditions for
And
applicants.
every time that they
on
come in,
disposal.
it's gotten more strict
Every
and
time
more
it's a little
strict.
more strict, but I don't want to learn the hard lessons like we learned on solar. Let's get ahead of it.
If it makes you feel any better, I've worked, as you guys know, in several municipalities, and I did look after that last meeting, and not a single one of them has performance standards for a gas station.
Well,
North Berwick might, but that's not one that I was hired by.
Right.
Old
Wells,
Orchard does not. Saco
What does the
does
state
not.
have,
Wells
though?
does
Yeah,
not.
see, that
and
was
Niagara
The
does.
state's got a very
I'm just saying
strict.
we're not.
you know,
we're not the
and
only
I think
ones that don't have it. Is all I'm saying.
No,
We're
no,
not the
correct.
only
And
ones.
I think
so
if we
it's
look
not
at-
like a massive oversight on our part. It's not. I don't want you guys all feeling like, oh my God, we've missed the boat, because it's just not something that most municipalities are handling it with the thing that Nicole brought up. With
and that's what I
meetings and
said
stuff, finding
when
another use.
it
So
was
it's-
first brought up, is that
It's not that.
that these standards exist at a state and federal level. That we have DEP and Maine DEP, and we already have regulations on gas stations, and how they are built, how they're designed, how their tanks work, and stuff like that. So if we don't have standards, then it just defaults to the state and federal level, which they already do have the standards.
It's similar to when we placed our oil tank out here.
Yeah.
We had,
Oh my
we were
gosh.
close to the river. We had to follow all the rules. We had to do.
There's-
When I came on to Envision, I was made to understand that the mission was to back up the comp plan, and that the comp plan backs up the surveys. And so I've spent a lot of time reading the surveys, going back, quite a ways. And when I'm sort of stuck on something with Envision, we go back to that and we look at what those surveys have told us and how they've. And I'm on the comp plan too, and the comp plan takes its marching orders from the surveys, and then that becomes all of our sort of marching orders, right? That what we've set out as the goals of the town become our goals. I think outside of the obviously we also have we have our constitution, we have our state constitution. Those are all important, but also understanding the tone and the tenor of our town and what the citizens want is a huge component of it. And just because something works and is regulated at the state level doesn't necessarily mean that it's also correct for Berwick. Just like what's going to work for Old Orchard Beach, which has a huge tax base from tourism that we don't have. This is a very different town.
I'm aware of that. I was just saying we're not
Sure. And it's not an insult. I'm just saying, that of course, that you know, people are going to get off the road and you're going to have a gas station before you go to Old Orchard Beach. But it doesn't. It's going to be different here, as it should be, and it should always be a consideration what our citizens feel strongly they want out of us, and what we can deliver to them, and whether it's gas stations everywhere or no gas stations, performance standards, or a moratorium. We always have to look at what they've asked us to do. This is why we're here.
Going back to that is the comp plan, the planning board is Route 4 has always been our commercial industrial corridor. If we're going to do anything like this, this is where we want it. That's what we've said in the past. Is 236, Route 9, and Route 4 are going to be our commercial areas. They're the state roads. They're where we want it. Route 4 has the most traffic. This is where we want to put that stuff. No, we're not going to have it over on School Street. We're not going to have it on Cranberry Meadow Road. We want to have it where we already have in place, the commercial and industrial zone. And as far as the moratorium is, I'm not in favor of one personally. I think that we can handle this through our process to do it correctly. And although there isn't a permit, there's nothing in writing or anything. Everybody knows that this gas station, has been thought about. If we put a moratorium on now, that owner's going to come back and says, I'm already in the pipeline. You can't stop me.
Well, we got another issue with the moratorium, and I'm sorry, I'm impatient. James was going to take this, but part of the lovely regulations here, for a moratorium, it has to be a necessity, and it must be needed because the application of existing comprehensive plans, land use ordinances, or regulations or other applicable laws, if any, is inadequate to prevent serious public harm from residential, commercial, or industrial development in the affected geographic area. And I don't think that's going to pass the straight face test because they're regulated on the state level, they're regulated on the federal level, and we can regulate them through our land use ordinances. So I literally don't think that if we put a moratorium through that it's going to pass the
correct. And I think that's with anything that we got to be cautious of is, people could appeal and people could take the town to court and appeal it there, and we don't have enough to stand on. And now we're just wasting taxpayer dollars, and we still lose.
Exactly.
So now we just cost the town more money, and we're not losing side of it.
My question about the legality of moratorium is, we don't have a definition of what a gas station is in our land use ordinance. How do we put a moratorium on something we don't have a definition of?
We already have some in the town.
Well, but it's not defined in our land use ordinance. So we put gas stations on the moratorium list, and then people say, I'm building something. Oh, it's not a gas station. It's a fuel depot. Whatever. You don't have a definition for what it is, so I can do it.
I think
just call it something else.
Fair point, well made.
And I think,
we're not
listening
lawyers. All due respect, we're just a bunch of people.
Correct.
Conversation. If we just have a lawyer, they can help us with that. That's not. I don't think we can just stop because we're not able to.
But we have a process in place, and if you listen to what Lee J is, that's where we can use the planning board and use the tools we have to say, this is the condition we want to put on this. This is what the neighbors are saying we want to put this here. This is what and you set those conditions. And most of these builders, they've done this, and trust me, in other towns that are more strict than us, some that are less strict, and they're going to come and meet halfway or work that way too, because they want to be good neighbors. They don't want to come in and be they want to make money, so they're not going to come in here and build something that the town doesn't want. So
we don't even take care of what we have. 2 gas stations in town now.
And one the tanks are expiring.
Right, shit about Cumberland Farms, it always looks like hell. Gas station down on the corner. We're sitting about a brand new gas station on Route 4.
That's a really good point.
Hey, if people want to get their cannabis and gas in a relatively short area, they should be able to.
In an ATM
And
across
that
the-
is our tourist industry right now. People are coming from out of state to
Just
come,
put 'em out
come
before you
just
pump,
to our
please.
stores.
I can tell you that because Blackberry Hills is bypassed now.
Yep.
Well, I've been informed Maine is where you get the weed, and then Dover is where you get the glass.
Yep, they do
Get the
have
what?
the head shops. They have the head shops there.
Your,
Yeah.
What shop?
Head
They
shops.
call them head shops, smoke shops.
Yeah, smoke
places to purchase your items that you're going
Accessories.
So we've left an opportunity on the table that we definitely are going to be making money on when we put in our Walmart of bongs on Route 4.
Walmart
Well,
bonds.
I got a question. Pat and Paul brought this up. The water in that area. That's the South Berwick Aquifer. They get their water for the town right there.
Yeah. So what we would have to look at would be maybe potentially additional.
Well, we could condition annual testing, or
Yeah.
you know,
Well, but
I mean,
South Berwick should have a say because we're going through this and the development up in the industrial park.
If
Well,
it affects their
that-
resources.
I don't think so
What
because
development in the industrial park?
The one
they're
South Berwick.
they want to add a housing development right on the backside of it.
On 236 down?
No.
No,
No.
off of
Route
Route
4.
4,
Off of,
right off the industrial road, Industry Drive. Yep.
Oh,
At the
Nick's
end of
property?
it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
But they want to use the industrial road out to Route 4 for the people from the 50 housing development to come out through.
Right.
So we make them
Right
put
on,
in
right onto the
turning
50
lanes.
mile an hour road.
Right
Well,
back
and
to
make
the
them
same
put
thing.
that road up to
Yeah.
the Newtown standards
Right,
too.
right,
And
exactly.
that's,
You know,
you know,
anytime they come
Might-
across there, we.
Might be a good thing to add the turning lanes onto that.
Well, no, that we, yeah, but the state won't do it. You know,
Right.
is they said, oh, if you guys want to do it, we're more than happy to
Well,
help
no,
you.
I'm saying we've had to meet with South Berwick with them on this project because
Yeah.
our planning board has to approve it too. Maybe that needs to be something that you
Yes,
think
you
about.
know,
Those
definitely.
tanks have to be tested every year.
Yep.
And what happens, like, how much is it to remediate? Like, say they open for 5 years, and then they close, and then those tanks are there, right, that had oil and gas.
You're going to take them out.
They have to
They-
take
they-
them out.
the
But that's,
state-
that's a condition you could put into that too. That like,
How would that say?
We've
they-
done that with solar,
Yep.
and ideally, you ask the applicant, you're like, okay, in future dollars,
Yeah.
will you set aside money in a, what
And
what
that lives
we-
in an account or something?
yeah,
that they
in
would
a,
have?
In a-
what kind of
Escrow.
account did we call that? It was
And that would
Escrow-
cover us
escrow
for, like,
account.
if they did go bust, and rather than the town having to come up
Correct.
with money for the brownfield.
Correct. If they couldn't
Yeah.
afford it
So
because
they
they went
put
under,
their-
that's
State
already
already
there.
has that account.
Yep.
That would be so useful.
Yeah.
They already have that.
The state pays for the
No, they
No,
own
they
it.
put it in.
State
The
has
state
it.
owns it.
Oh, so whoever
The
buys
DEP,
that,
the DEP.
they have to have that money
Right,
in
it's
an
in-
account.
it's in
No,
there.
No, the state takes the money and keeps it in the account.
Okay,
They call it some sort of fund. I can't remember the name of it. It's a fund.
that's good.
It's like the
And they
FDIC for
have to have
gas
insurance
stations.
on it too. Also, so the insurance will have to
Right.
take care of it.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's a good question. But yes.
Well, like for one example, like our underground oil tank, we got an alarm that our oil was leaking into a secondary confinement. So before it became a major issue of contamination, we were already aware that there was an issue.
So like there's like an
That's how-
outer layer that
That's
you
how
know,
the tanks are built. I just learned about that today on my Boston detour this morning, but that's how gas tanks are built, is they have the single,
the double walls.
they have the single wall that holds your gas and then a secondary exterior with alarms and sensors in it. So that way, if anything where the gas is
Sorry,
actually
Phil.
leaks,
Is
you know, and you
Kramer
can
had a
stop
flat
it
over
before
layer
it gets
thing?
out and into the groundwater, into that.
As long as everything works.
Yeah.
Like, then
That's part of
we
their-
don't
part of their
never have
regular
problems
testing.
as human beings. That's part of being
That's when it runs
human.
into it.
Sometimes things go wrong, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
But that's
Also part
that's one of the things that they have to test, and that's something that we can give some consideration to when we're writing our conditions
Yep. Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
approval and whatever, what have you.
We could have a train derailment, and then the tankers on those pollute more than the gas station.
100%.
Well, luckily they don't.
But,
They can't
I
go very
mean-
fast through there. At least. You know.
No, but it's right next to the water.
Yeah, that's true.
For a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have the contact for the South Berwick superintendent, water superintendent, so I talked with him for a couple of the projects. So I can forward that to the planning department.
Sounds
Any
good.
other comments about the process for possible new gas stations, convenience stores, and the standards that we can impose.
Thanks for the education on moratoriums.
Yes, thank you, James. All right, next item is the Edge update.
The first building, the L-shaped building, they have, I think, tenants almost ready to fill it. So there's 4 there now. There's a salon, dental, spa, which is great. I got my teeth cleaned there a couple months ago.
They give you a discount?
Primal Fit.
In the gym. So.
They will now.
Yeah, that's a plug. Yeah. So 4 businesses and a few more on the way. We pause for. Bye, guys. Good night.
My bad.
Good night. Thank you.
The building that's being built now is 10 one-bedroom units and 2 commercial units.
And
So-
it's beautiful.
We'll have.
I mean, it looks nice from the outside for sure.
Oh no, all the
It looks nice
framing
on the
is
inside, too.
the framing is phenomenal.
That's always good to hear. You know what?
Well, you can tell. I actually told James this after I went through and did the rough framing. You can tell a lot about a company by the rough framing.
Oh yeah, well,
Because it speaks to they're planning for the future use of that building. They're really planning 100% for all potential future inevitabilities.
I've worked with that company
yeah.
on other projects, Poland Springs
Mm-hmm.
High School.
Mm-hmm.
They're great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
That's
They're a good group of people.
Yeah, they are a good group of people.
it's absolutely beautiful. Sorry.
That's why we have them.
I was so happy about going in there and seeing how good they did.
There's the next building they're working on. It will be a coffee drive-through. So you'll see the drive-through get completed. They're actually going to work on building both of the roads out towards the end of this year. So and I believe there's even another building that will be started along the way. So major progress.
That next building goes up on this side of the pump station, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's going to be Aroma Joe's.
Allegedly.
A coffee
It's
shop.
going to be a coffee shop
And they're going to close
with a
it down, the
drive-through.
one they have.
It's going to be a coffee shop with a drive-through.
Why did we not condition that to be orange and pink? Come on, guys. I thought you loved me.
Before you.
Oh, okay. You're forgiven.
There's some.
I mean, a Dunkin' Donuts would do great over there too. Whenever I drive through that one by Dover, it's like on a line into traffic
Oh, yeah,
going
even
around.
Summersworth.
Yeah,
too.
it's-
It's ridiculous.
yeah.
People love their coffee.
Any
Just gotta know the
coffee
right
shop.
time to hit them, boys.
I
Not
always
at 8
miss
in the
it.
morning.
There'll be some major infrastructure work happening over the next couple of years. They're upsizing the culvert to a box culvert to get the stream across, which will upsize our stormwater capacity for the next 100 years in the area. We have a drainage project to pick up from the end of the edge to get to the Salmon Falls River. So it'll pretty much be like the old Sanford Road, School Street project, except I don't believe we're going to have an automatic light there. But just to give you an idea, it's crossing from the edge, across Sawmill Hill, down Gateway Gas's second parking lot there to the river. So that's happening this summer. We're making some good progress on underground utilities, coordinating with CMP, Consolidated Communications, and Comcast. So getting all the entities together, and we're able to bring power from School Street or from Sawmill Hill, and power in a way where we can backfeed some buildings to save a lot on costs and
Nice.
keep the project relatively simple. We met with a contractor and project manager from Comcast, and they both worked on the New Market project. So the New Market project's a lot of the ways what we kind of model what we're trying to go after. So to have
New Market project?
New Market, when Frank worked on it and they brought all those utilities underground, the contact we have with Comcast and Consolidated Communications was part of that
Worked on
project. Yeah. And we're working on finalizing some grants and going after more funding in the short term. So that's what I got for the Edge updates. Any questions?
When are they looking for occupancy for the residential units? Is that coming up pretty quick, or?
I'm not sure when they. I don't know off the top of my head, but they've. I can get an answer on that.
For 8 Main, the one that was built.
That one's going to be residential, correct? The
Yeah.
tall one that went up.
I've only done rough framing, so they've
Gotcha.
still got their plumbing.
They got a ways to
insulation.
go.
They got a
Moving
little.
along pretty good.
Oh yeah, they're going fast, but that's where they're at. I think I might have gotten an email from them to go in next week.
They need
maybe.
their 10 apartments to make the building work.
Right.
I know they've mentioned what their anticipated completion date is. I just forget off the top of my head.
It's not like you don't have a lot going on.
I mean, I think the big thing is kudos to you, James, with a lot of the grant funding, what the town's been able to capture in the last even 18 months of coming from the state and everything. So that's a huge win there. So
I think if you go back to YouTube, it was us sitting around in joint meetings talking about just what was to come. So a lot of the ways, just all of us coming together and clarifying what the next steps are is a huge help.
How do we plan on? So my neighbor sold his cows, right? So he's all done milking cows. How do we make sure that see that continues as a farm in some sort of way or another instead of a bunch of house lots?
Someone
Why don't we
buy
take
it
a look at Wentworth
and use
Road,
it
where
for
that
a
big
farm?
there on Wentworth Road is now 8 lots for $200,000 a piece.
8
Why
lots
isn't
now.
that kept as open land? Why aren't we figuring out where to get the money to buy it?
That's a really
That's
good
what we should be
question.
looking at
Yes.
in a lot of instances.
At least, going back to what I was saying before, from the surveys, people are very clear that is
part of the deal.
Not just part. It seems to be pretty high on people's list.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, what's happened downtown and all the work and all the focus, going back to the 2013 survey, that was the big one, right, with the 500 respondents, and a lot of it's about that. But I want to say most of it is about open space. It's about not overdeveloping. It's about keeping our rural
atmosphere.
Yeah, small town vibes, all of that, and people have been clear with that survey, with the 2019 survey. It's top of the list, and as part of the comp plan, one of the things that I keep coming up against, I think, just generally, is it'd be great to have a plan, but without a pile of money to go around buying up that property. You really have to plan very
You
carefully.
have to raise the money.
Yes.
You
Yes.
have to raise the money, and it comes
We have
state, federal, and private sources.
Well, we have $80,000 built back up in open space impact fees.
Yeah, but that's not
$80,000 is going to buy it.
$80,000 won't even get you. What does that get you? Won't even get you 5 acres in today's market.
You know, he doesn't even give the guy a tax
Yeah.
break. You can't buy a property break on his taxes.
I mean, we do,
You
but
know,
we
that's-
do
that's-
give. I mean, we do have
You can
tax
buy
breaks for
non-buildable lots.
agricultural.
Yeah, but they're not enough.
You can buy non-buildable
But
lots.
I mean, like,
Massive.
but I
I'm
mean,
still
like,
paying $25,000 a year for growing trees.
It's,
I mean, that's no good.
the thing
But I mean,
the
like-
thing with property taxes is, they have the open space taxes, they have the farmland, no subsidies and things. But as a town, we can't say that we're gonna value somebody else's property different than another person's property. No, we as a town can't do that. We can't say, all right, farmer A, we're gonna tax you at $10 per thousand, and homeowner B, we're going to tax you at $20 a thousand.
Aren't there agricultural exemptions?
Yeah, there are, yeah.
But
it's
not
still for soil.
not in the
Oh,
not
really?
in the
It's
town.
not worthwhile.
Not in the town though. You can't
So
just
how
Pick and
how these
choose.
other towns do it?
I haven't heard of another way they can do it other than through the states. Through the state or the federal.
Go
I know some things. And I've sat on the board of directors for the Great Works Regional Land Trust as well. How to get tax breaks on land? Usually, there's a minimum lot size, so it's putting it into open space or current use, and it's like 8 to 13 acres, depending on where you are. But that's the way to basically get that tax break. And to preserve land, we worked on this a lot at the Land Trust. That's what they do. They don't have a lot of money to go out and buy land and preserve it either. really the way to do it is to have people who own the land that are stewards of the land and put easements on it to limit development, and that's the easiest way. Maybe to incentivize them somehow. I'm not sure how. I'm sure towns have done it, but really.
In the past, Great Works Land Trust has a lot of properties in Berwick, and they work with private landowners, and they raise money. But in the past, they have asked. We had warrant articles in there, to give money to them to buy it, which is for the Great Works Land Trust. They buy the land, but they continue paying their taxes. They're not required to because they're a nonprofit, but because they want to work with the towns to promote this stuff, they still pay the property taxes.
They're not tax exempt?
Oh, they are, but they choose not to.
How many of them have farms on them though? Like most of them is just green.
Yeah,
talking about here?
No. Like the land trust. How many are used as farms?
A lot of that's wetland.
Orange Circle for one.
Well, quite
only organic CSA, and that isn't all. Actually, that's not Great Works. That's Main Farmland Trust.
He's right. What are they still milking cows on?
Right.
Where are they still milking cows?
Right.
Well, so to my way of thinking, and from the little bit of energy and research I've been able to put into this, we have to take a multi-tier approach. And one of the things that it would be smart to do is to start to encourage farmers to come here. There are places that put a lot of energy into encouraging people who are going to school in Orono or in some of the ag schools in Vermont who are interested in stuff like. I always thought that if the Dunn Farm became a creamery, that the people who are looking at property to put a creamery in, that's a great place. And I'm not making a deal for Fred Dunn, but starting to make those connections for people and thinking about this in every way we possibly can seems to be the only way that you're going to save it, because you can't, even with the pot of money, you're not going to necessarily solve it. You have to have 20 solutions and spinning them up all at once.
And you would still need somebody who wants to run it.
Right.
I mean,
Yes,
protecting the land's one part, finding somebody who actually wants to run the farm
we got a
is.
brewery by coming out and saying, this town values this.
Yeah.
We want beer here, and that's how we did it.
But we're
It's the
stuck
same.
now. We have a problem now with the breweries, because what is the cost for the sewer plant? You were talking about it a week or two ago, that the sewer plant is costing too much money, so the brewery that wants to go across the street is they're not game for it. Because I talked to John Smith about it last Friday, about how those tanneries fees are so high it doesn't work to put another brewery. Those guys over there are crying.
Yeah.
So that's what we should be talking to, is the shit plan. Get that straightened out. Find out why. James, you know why.
I think.
But wait, before we get off to the brewery, let's just finish the thought about the farms for a second.
Sure.
And you're right, it's important.
No, go ahead.
But we do. I just want to say that we have to put that intention out there, and then we have to start hustling.
Right.
We got to let people know every instrument this town has to encourage. And I'm saying young farmers, but I mean new farmers, and any way that we can compete with other towns where somebody's looking to set up shop, whether it's a brewery or a creamery or they want to grow organic vegetables or whatever it is, at every level, whatever instruments we have to be helpful and get out of the way of that that's the best thing we can do right now, I think.
Yeah, and then once we start that, and once a few businesses hear about it, and they come in and it works great, it's going to just be self-fulfilling.
Well, let's
That's
hope.
going to keep working.
Well,
if
let's
it works
hope.
out.
Yeah.
We also have almost a cap on livestock too. You can only have a certain amount per acre.
Per acre.
I think I don't think it applies to R3.
It doesn't apply to R3.
Yeah.
How come there's one on livestock?
Yeah, in R2 and R1.
Yeah, like you can't have roosters in
R1.
Yeah.
Yep.
If it was up to me, I would say, that's not.
Yep.
That's
Oh,
not.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I've
Nicole
seen
and I
that.
helped put that
Kill
up.
towns in California.
Because there was pigs in R1 downtown. There was something like 10 pigs in that.
But for livestock, if you want to watch out for how they put out a carbon footprint,
Yeah.
well, if you start mixing their feed with red seaweed, that brings their carbon footprint down to next to nothing.
Well, yeah, even just rotationally grazing them makes a huge difference. That adds
Gotta be more
to the
certain.
soil.
I know.
Just Jared throws things out across over here.
But to Mark's point, I probably shouldn't say what I'm about to say, but I've been approached by 2 lawyers with letters wanting to buy my land in South Berwick. And when I asked why, I was given the answer that they want my land, which is, it can't be developed, but they want it for open space to do something else and have that open space. And I abut Dunn's. That's all I'm
The
going to
mother,
say.
you about your mother there, yeah.
So I'm just saying, this is what I was told. This was just within the last 2 months.
Send them over.
But my land in South Berwick's going to the Great Works Land Trust. I'm
But
just going
mine's
to give
going
it to
nowhere
them.
right now, but I would like to talk to them and find out what it is. Your neighbor call you.
I know what it is.
Tell me. Let me know.
Okay, he'll do it outside the workshop.
outside the door, please.
How I can do it right now. I'd do it. But my hands are tied in a lot of instances because of the business. You know,
How you could do what?
But
preserve it forever.
Talk to Great Works Land Trust.
No, they don't have enough money.
but
I'm not interested in giving it to them right now. I don't know if I can survive. And that's part of the problem.
Steve Brown is selling house
The town
lots for
steps up and
$2
says,
million.
okay, we can get this much money to put it into a trust. Right now, it's gonna go into a foundation. But the foundation, I don't have to pay taxes if it goes into a foundation, but even still, I'm not sure that that's the right way. I don't know.
Oh, I'll speak from personal experience. My family, put our farm, 120 acres, in a trust with the Great Works Land Trust.
Right.
And for us, it's worked great. Is we still get to use the land, we still harvest the wood off it, we still use it for firewood, and we lease out the field to a farmer, Charlie Bear from South Berwick. And with 120 acres, is our taxes are minimal because it's either in farmland or open space or forestry or whatever. And like the big parcel is, I think it's like $500 a year taxes. So is anybody out there looking to do this? Is you can do this and still use your land. You don't have to give it up.
No.
So is.
But you're giving it up to only do certain things. The development-
Right, you can't develop it, you can't, but.
Right.
Is that if we're gonna, if people want to buy these big parcels of land and they want to develop them into multiple housing, multiple lot things, we can talk about in terms of conditions of use or land use ordinance that an equal amount of the land has to be kept open or trees or whatever it is currently, as just a means of not having everything overdeveloped.
Sure, but a lot of times with
That's hard with
developments,
farmland,
the
though.
front of it
If you
will
want
be
to keep
the-
farmland,
Yeah.
you kind of have to have the right neighbors for it too.
Right.
Not too many people in a big development are going to want cows or livestock.
Spread in the
in the spring when they're right. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, and the sad thing is as time goes by, the population is increasing. More people are coming from Massachusetts, New Hampshire.
Well, I mean, one of the things we can do.
Anything we can do, we can undo later if needs be. But I'm just saying,
I don't know if that's true.
well,
You mean as far as ordinances?
something to
yeah,
go
in terms of ordinances, I mean, but
But
I'm
we
just
can
saying
do
that if the concern is that obviously getting farmers and maintaining farmland is one aspect, but also if overdevelopment and losing rural charm is the concern, then we can find a way to make that a condition of these developments where they keep equal space open.
Cluster
Increase lot
development.
sizes.
Yeah.
But that's not being fair to the landowner.
Right.
That's where
Right.
that's the problem.
That's called
If
being
we want to keep that, we have
NIMBY.
to pony up with the bucks.
I'm not saying it. Well, to be fair, any condition we place on any building is unfair to the landowner. They should be able to do whatever they want to.
No.
but we
No, I
but
don't
we
agree
have
with that.
but we have limits, and I'm just saying that as a town, if collectively we say rural charm is very important to us, then as a town we can vote in land use ordinance, which says if you're going to put in a big development, You better, have equal space that you're keeping open as part of that development, so
Don't
that
we
we're
have
not.
open space now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that that's the way we go. I'm just saying that it's an option that's available to us. So we don't lose our rural charm.
Not to throw one more thing on Envision, but Jeremy, I mean that, like you said, be intentful. Maybe that might be something with the farmers market or anybody that you see, just outreach or find that contact and be like, hey, this is what we
Find
want in
someone that
town.
wants
This is
to
what we
lease
have.
it.
Farmers that are
Find
trying
someone
to,
that
if
wants
you know
to
somebody
rent
wants
that
to move
field.
in,
I mean,
see if there's a way to just build that network.
We
You
used
know,
to
try
have
to
Maine
get it,
Farmland Trust, but we don't have that anymore.
Well, they still have small woodlot owners in Maine too, and I've seen that in other communities where once you
Page cut it all the way
allow
back.
them to get their hooks into it, it's a pretty significant tax exemption, but you have to let them come in and log it every so many years, and you can't develop it, but you can keep it natural, and let it tree regrowth, and
Yeah.
that Maine does have a program for that, so that's stuff for people to think about, but it does limit what you can do with your land, but it does also protect the land that it can't be developed, so.
Yeah.
No,
So
but yeah,
it's
and
critical.
if it's up in front, somebody knows prior to buying it, this is
Absolutely.
the condition.
That
They're
was the
making
whole
that
reason I
choice
didn't
before
buy
they're
a
doing
home
it.
is 'cause it had
Correct.
that, yeah. Yeah.
So they're making that choice that they know that that's
Correct.
the condition of it already, and that could be something that you're still going to attract the right people if we find the right network to hit
Yeah.
that. Where you're giving somebody a choice, but it's also protecting what we want to protect in town.
I mean, just generally, does everybody kind of, I know some of you, I don't know others of you. Where is everybody's, in terms of following the tone of the citizens, where's everybody's head at with kind of our mission? Again, I'm on the comp plan, right? That's setting our goal for the next. It's not done yet.
It's not. We're still going through it. No, but again, and
Comp plan is what, 30 years
Yeah.
old? 30 years old, and it's been 4 years since it's been trying to get updated.
A bunch of surveys. In 2013,
it gets a little steam and then it slows down. Gets a little steam.
And then we did one in 2019. Was the last really big survey.
Well, you can get the tone of the people all you want, but we see it all the time when we go on these site walks, right? You got a guy he's not getting any younger, and what's his legacy going to be for his family? And case in point, several developments within this town. I'm going to sell this to a developer, and he's going to subdivide it, and he's going to make lots, and it's their right to do that with their land.
I don't
So the
wanna be
reality is, I'm sorry.
I don't want to be the jerk face here, but that's kind of the reality. Is
That's the
unless you
reality.
guys
You're going to
buy
have
it-
developers that come in with big money, and if that landowner, if I'm 70 something years old and I want to go retire in Florida and I want to leave a legacy for my kids, what am I going to do? I'm going to sell that land to a developer. I'm going to take that money and run. And you can't fault people for doing that.
No,
They
but
want to go
we
retire.
can still hold the developer's feet to the fire.
Absolutely, with the
Correct.
green space,
Correct.
100%,
Open space,
100%.
That's
But I don't fault
but they're not
people
gonna want
for selling their
livestock.
assets to
But
retire.
I can't make
you know?
them. I can't force them to farm on the
No,
land.
no, you can't.
From the
You can
code
either
But
add or water.
you could perhaps make it so they could.
Or maybe
Right?
try and
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
maybe try and
Let's give it
incentivize
a-
homesteading
Correct.
and small
Correct.
market
Yes.
farms.
Correct.
I mean
It's
that
an agrarian lifestyle built
Right.
into the.
And again,
which
I think
that would
that's
enrich
where-
the community a lot more
Yeah.
than just having one big monoculture farm.
And again, that's where I think
Yeah.
leveraging Envision on that is, that's that you can put that out there. This is a farm-friendly town, and you kind of try to recruit those people to buy
somewhat
that land to come
farm-friendly
in.
town, as long as it's in R3.
Well, yeah, exactly. On the outskirt, not
Which R3 is pretty big. I mean, there's plenty of room in
but
R3.
try to leverage so that you're getting the right people to buy that land.
Yeah.
Versus
That's
somebody else.
that's the,
you know.
like the code creed. I hate to say this, and we generally don't say it. We think it a lot more than we say it. If you wanted the view, you should have bought it. So, because in the code perspective, the code world, the town has set out their zones.
Yep.
This is what was determined. This is what is acceptable, and if it's acceptable there, then so be it, because that's what the town decided. So basically, if you want to keep that view open, you need to find some way for somebody to buy it, donate it, give it to the town, because if it comes through, like Phil was saying, somebody wants to sell it and develop it, it may not be what we sitting here want to see, but per the zoning, that's what the town wanted to see. So,
Talk about the one lot. My neighbor was like, I almost bought it, and I was like, now somebody else is like, but that's what it is. It's
well,
not.
and
I
I
could have stopped it. I could have bought it.
Oceanfront communities, and that's kind of the realities. If you want the view, you should have bought it.
It's a
That's the
slow
way it has
motion
to be.
train crash
Yes.
that we're all living
Yes.
while we
Yep.
watch our town
Exactly.
become
Populated,
not just populated, but
densely populated. I mean, it's coming.
perverted like changed into something that it wasn't.
Well, everything changes
That's
to something that it wasn't eventually.
It's
But I mean,
not-
like,
it's not
Some places
Brigadoon,
don't though.
so-
Some places have the money to prioritize those things or make plans to
well, I mean, like,
not for nothing. Some places build an economy around what they have that's driving them, and it may just be that we don't, like the Duns stopped milking, right? So why did the Duns stop milking? Well, because they're part of a bigger milk system that we weren't able to shift and prioritize in a different way. And there's a lot of reasons for it. It's not arbitrary. And I think with a lot of this stuff, some places, and I'm not saying I wish I'm here, right? I love this place. This is where I want to raise my family, and I chose it. But there are places where dairies become creameries, and local food systems are prioritized, and whether it's at local government level or because people have a lot of money for fancy cheese, I'd imagine it's a combination.
They're
But
spending it on fancy weed, so we're not going to get.
I don't know. I mean, if you can promote it, I'm sure the post-weed munchies.
Oh, man. Unless you get the munchies, then you want the
Yeah.
fancy cheese. You
I
got to
think that's
figure
a
it
great
out.
way to go.
Make it work it out.
Prioritize fancy fresh food with your fancy fresh weed, all from Berwick.
You need to do organic deep fried Gouda for the.
It'd be nice to have a farmer's market in town that's open all the time somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not like we have upstairs here, which is fine, but just more
An actual market.
Well, so
Get a
back to
co-op
here,
going
we don't
or
take care of what
something,
we
yeah.
have. These guys across the street have opened a butcher and market that is locally owned. It's not part of a corporate conglomerate, and they want to support local. We should all be shopping there.
Oh, yeah.
That is, we are so lucky to have them,
Yeah,
and
we
we
should
better
be
make
shopping.
sure that they expand and always do good business because that is exactly where our head needs to be.
And if it doesn't survive, then shame on us.
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Absolutely.
But to say we're 90 minutes in, I think that's a good time and a way to. We should start thinking about next steps. I think we want to work on marijuana ordinances. We want to shop local. We want to work on gas station standards. Mark touched upon, I think, revisiting the sewer fees, and I think we should be approaching the sewer district to ask them for a consumption-based equivalent dwelling unit to add to their fee schedule. We should be looking closely at our open space plan, farmland protection. There's also things in the comprehensive plan that get fed in the land use ordinance to protect scenic vistas. So we identify them and put them on a map. The more we layer, it's like layers. Just like farming economy is going to be built on layers. Same thing with protecting our rural character. Is there anything I missed? And I'll just last thing I'll just add is we can put a pencil on the calendar for June 27th. That way we won't go another.
Yep.
What day,
2 years.
What day of the week is that?
It's a Thursday. No, I'm kidding.
I think it's a
Tuesday.
Wednesday.
I think it's a fourth. Oh,
Hold on.
I think I scheduled
is
it
a
on a
Tuesday.
select board meeting.
No, because the select board's going to change to the 1st and 3rd in June. So that'll be an open Tuesday for us.
See, I did that on purpose.
Yeah,
The 27th will work.
sure.
Yeah, it's a Tuesday.
Subconsciously.
You did it on purpose.
That's the
We got
fourth
it.
Tuesday?
It'll be the 4th Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
because June is when we flip back to the 1st and 3rd for a select board, so that one will work for us.
June 27th is a Tuesday. All right, that should work out just fine then. 6:30, good.
Because I just put it in my calendar.
Yeah.
So.
James, if I could just add one piece, I just want, it's important to me, and I think it's important in us conducting the town's business, that we approach things with a level of civility and professionalism. And the only reason I bring that up is, in the past couple of weeks, I've asked some difficult questions, but I've framed those questions in a manner that was seeking information. And those questions were met with, in some cases, a hostile and confrontational dialogue. And I just think in our professional decorum, as we carry out the town's business. I really don't think there's any place for that. And I'm always going to conduct myself as a professional. I'm not going to get heated. There's nothing worth getting heated about in here. We can have a difference of opinion and be professionals. So I think we should all take that pledge to just be professional with each other and carry out the town's business as professionals, because the going on camera and calling people out, it's not reasonable. If you have a problem with somebody, address it with them one-on-one. I'm an approachable guy. I know what my stature sometimes is off-putting to some people, but I'm an approachable guy, and I'm willing to have that difficult discussion. So if you have an issue with something I said, come talk to me. We'll have a reasonable discussion, but raising your tone, being hostile, that's not it. So I'll just leave it with that. I appreciate it.
We are all public servants.
Do we still get to jerk each other's chains?
I thought you were going somewhere else with that. That's going to get weird.
Usually I'm the one making it weird.
Any
And you're
further
blushing.
comments, questions, non-agenda items?
Motion to adjourn?
Yep, seconded. All those in favor?
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Been great.